Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we need to talk about a feeling that, well, I think we're all a little too familiar with. You know the one. It's maybe 11:30 at night. The house is quiet, and you're just bathed in that pale blue glow from your phone screen, scrolling, double tapping, watching people live these, I don't know, seemingly perfect lives.
The modern bedtime story.
Yeah.
Except instead of relaxing us, it usually does the exact opposite.
Right. And here's the thing that really gets me. We have more ways to talk to each other than any civilization in history. I could literally video chat with someone in Antarctica right now if I wanted to.
hmm
But the data, and honestly, just the vibe suggests we've never felt more isolated. It's the big paradox, right? Drowning in connections, but dying of thirst.
That is a very poetic, if slightly depressing way to put it.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong. The loneliness stats have just been trending upwards for a decade. It's that crowded room effect. You can be surrounded by a million users and still feel like no one actually sees you.
Exactly. So when I picked up the research for today's deep dive, I was expecting another doom and gloom report. We're looking at a piece titled The Echo Chamber, Finding Human Connection Online. And honestly, when I saw that title, I think I audibly sighed. I thought, great, another lecture on how I need to delete my apps and go touch grass.
It's a natural reaction.
Yeah.
We have sort of been beaten over the head with the idea that the internet is the root of all evil.
But, and this is why I love doing the show, I was completely wrong about where this was going. This isn't a lecture. It's almost like a dispatch from the near future. The text frames itself as looking at the year 2026, and it argues something that sounds, well, frankly, impossible.
Okay.
That the echo chamber, the very thing we blame for tearing us apart, might actually be the thing that saves us.
It's a bold hypothesis. And what I appreciate is that it treats 2026 not as some, sci-fi world with flying cars, but as a sociological milestone. It's a story about human behavior adapting. The author suggests we're living through an adjustment period right now, and that we're on the verge of a massive correction in how we interact online.
A correction. That sounds like something you'd hear on Wall Street.
In a way, it is, but instead of correcting for inflated value, we're correcting for inflated noise. The central argument is that the internet is evolving from a place of performance to a connection catalyst.
Connection catalyst. I have to be the skeptic here for a second, because when I open Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it this week, I don't see a catalyst for connection. I see a catalyst for blood pressure medication.
Healthy skepticism.
Is this just optimism, or does the author actually have a leg to stand on?
No, it's a fair question, and the author starts exactly there. They don't shy away from the current reality at all. They spend the first section dissecting what they call the digital bubble.
Yeah.
And they define the echo chamber in a way that I think answers your skepticism.
Yeah, let's unpack that, because usually when we say echo chamber, we just mean I only hear political opinions I agree with. But this goes deeper.
Much deeper. The author defines the current echo chamber not just as a filter for opinions, but as a mechanism for validation loops. The algorithms, they're designed to show you what keeps you engaged and what keeps us engaged.
Outrage.
Usually, yeah. Things that confirm our biases or spike our adrenaline.
Right, the outrage cycle.
But the text notes a really specific consequence of this. Voices grow louder, not deeper. It's such a great line. In a crowded digital room, everyone starts shouting to be heard. And when everyone shouts, nuance dies. The author calls it a place where everyone talks, but no one listens.
That hits home. I was reading comments on a news article the other day, and it felt like 2,000 people standing in a stadium just screaming their own names. There was no conversation, just output.
Precisely. And the emotional toll of that is what sets the stage for the shift. The text highlights a feeling of surrounded by screens, yet often feeling alone. We are exhausted. And the author argues that this exhaustion is actually a good thing.
How on earth can exhaustion be a good thing?
Because systems only change when the pain of staying the same becomes too great. We're reaching a saturation point of noise. People are tired of the performance, tired of the shouting, and that fatigue creates an opening for something else.
Okay, so we're all burnout victims of the algorithm. I buy that. But the author identifies a specific moment, an inciting incident that signals this shift. And I want to get into the details because it wasn't some massive global charity event. It wasn't a celebrity starting a movement.
No, it was remarkably small.
It was a video, a short vertical video. And the description is so vivid. It's a rainy Tuesday in Chicago. You're on a subway platform. It's gray. It's miserable. And this guy, just a regular guy, is carrying these two bursting bags bags of groceries.
And we know exactly what happens next. The bag rips.
The bag rips, and it's not just a bag of chips, it's oranges. A dozen bright orange spheres just cascading onto this dirty, gray concrete, rolling dangerously close to the platform edge.
Mhm.
Now, in the old internet, or maybe the internet of 2024, if someone filmed that, what happens?
Well, the camera probably zooms in on his embarrassment.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a funny sound effect.
Hmm.
The comments would be full of people mocking him. Look at this clumsy guy. Why didn't he double bag?
This is why I drive. Yeah, it becomes content to be consumed and laughed at. We distance ourselves, we judge. But the author says this specific video, which went viral in this 2026 timeline, had no editing, no music, no voiceover. It was just raw. And in the video, three strangers immediately drop what they're holding and just dive in. They're scrambling on their hands and knees, grabbing these oranges before they hit the tracks.
Nothing dramatic, nothing staged. That's the key phrase the text uses. It was messy. It was human.
And the reaction, that's where the correction you mentioned really shows up.
Yes, the comment section just didn't do what it was supposed to do. The algorithm expects engagement through conflict or mockery, but instead, the comments became a confessional.
I wrote some of these down because they were so un-internet. One person wrote, "I needed this today." Another said, "This reminded me of my father helping a lady with her stroller." And then this one, which I think is the linchpin of the whole thing, "I thought I was the only one feeling this way."
I thought I was the only one. That is the sound of the echo chamber cracking.
It's weird, right? Because usually admitting you're lonely or sad in a comment section is like bleeding in a shark tank. You expect to get eaten.
It is like bleeding in a shark tank.
Yeah.
Yes. But the author frames this as vulnerability, as a disruption tech. It's a fascinating concept. When the environment is saturated with fake perfection and manufactured outrage, raw vulnerability just pressed. It disrupts the pattern. It stops the scroll.
Because it feels real.
Exactly. It feels rare. And when that one user admitted they were struggling, he gave permission for the next 1,000 people to drop the mask. The noise of the echo chamber was replaced by a signal.
Okay, but we've seen nice moments go viral before. You know, the internet loves a hero for about 24 hours and then go back to arguing about whatever.
Yeah.
Why does the author think this was different? Why wasn't this just a blip?
That brings us to the concept of the unseen threads. The research suggests this wasn't just a moment of collective, that's nice. It transitioned into action. The text actually tracks the metadata of these interactions. It didn't stop at the comment section.
Right. They talk about how people started offering advice, sharing resources. But the part that blew my mind was the shift in how people saw each other. The text says usernames became people, avatars became faces.
There's a quote in that section that I think defines this entire sociological shift.
Yeah.
One user, in the middle of this thread about groceries and loneliness, says to a complete stranger, "I don't know why, but I trust you."
That is heavy. Trust is basically non-existent online. I don't even trust 5-star reviews on Amazon anymore.
With good reason. But think about the architecture of the internet. It's a zero-trust environment. We're conditioned to assume everyone is a bot, a scammer, or a troll. For someone to explicitly state, "I trust you," is a radical act.
So how do we get from "I trust you" in a comment section to an actual societal shift? Because the text claims that by 2026, these digital bubbles are morphing into actual communities.
Well, the author describes a progression. It starts with that shared vulnerability that builds a kind of safe harbor within the platform, but then it moves offline, or at least beyond the screen.
Yeah, they mentioned these groups started checking in on each other. Did you have that tough conversation with your boss? Did you manage to get out of bed today? It sounds like friendship.
It is friendship,
Yeah.
but a new kind of friendship.
Hmm.
The text points out that these groups were incredibly diverse. We're talking different cities, different tax brackets, different political affiliations. In the old echo chamber, these people would never interact. Or if they did, they'd be at each other's throats.
Because the algorithm usually sorts us by our demographics and beliefs.
Correct. But here, the sorting mechanism was shared emotional state. The unifying factor wasn't we all voted for the same person. It was we all know what it feels like to be overwhelmed.
I like that distinction. It's not about ideology, it's about humanity. The text says these bonds were built on honesty rather than curation, which again feels like a direct rebellion against the whole Instagram life of the early 2020s.
And that is why the author calls it a correction. We spent 2 decades curating our lives online, trying to impress strangers, and we realized it made us miserable. So the natural swing of the pendulum is toward messy honesty.
Okay, so let's look at the 2026 context the author builds, because they paint a picture of how the internet functions differently in this near future. It's not that the toxic stuff is gone,
Yeah,
right?
the toxic stuff is still there. Anger is a very potent emotion. It'll always have a place online. But the difference in 2026, according to the study, is the value placed on it. The novelty of outrage is worn off.
So people are just bored of being angry.
In a way. The text suggests that connection is becoming the new premium currency. In 2026, connection looks different, but it is still deeply human. We're seeing a move where users are actively curating their feeds not for entertainment, but for support.
They even mention that some of these grocery bag groups, I'm just calling them that now, eventually met in real life, which feels like the ultimate proof of concept. You go from pixels on a screen to a hug.
It validates the idea that the digital space doesn't have to be a replacement for the real world. It can be a bridge, a conduit.
This brings us to the final section of the research, the big realization. And this is where the author ties it all together with that term we started with, the connection catalyst.
This is the synthesis. The author asks us to reframe the echo chamber. Instead of seeing it as a walled garden that keeps people out, we can see it as an amplifier.
An amplifier for what, though?
For whatever we feed it, that's the mirror effect. The internet is just a giant mirror reflecting humanity back at itself. For a long time, we fed it anger, so it reflected a war zone. But the mechanics of care, described in the text, argue that empathy travels just as fast as outrage, if the conditions are right.
Empathy travels fast. I want to believe that. But is there data on that? Because bad news usually travels halfway around the world, while the truth is, putting its shoes on.
The author references something called the viral coefficient of care. When people see genuine kindness, like that Subway video, the share rates are actually higher than for political rants. The difference is the type of engagement. Rants get comments, which are usually arguments. Kindness gets shares, which is like silent approval. The shift in 2026 is that the algorithm starts rewarding the shares more than the arguments.
Oh, that's interesting. So the machine learns that we actually want to feel good.
Or rather, the machine learns that feeling good keeps us on the platform without burning us out. It's a sustainable engagement model versus a burnout model.
But the author doesn't let us off the hook, do they? They don't just say, wait for the algorithm to fix it.
No, and this is the part that might make some listeners uncomfortable. The text says, maybe the echo chamber is not the problem. Maybe the answer is how we use our voice inside it.
Oof. Yeah, that puts the ball firmly back in our court.
Yeah.
It's way easier to blame, some CEO or the algorithm for why we feel lonely. It's much harder to admit that maybe I'm part of the problem because I only comment when I'm annoyed.
Precisely. It brings up the concept of agency. We talk about the internet like it's the weather, something that just happens to us. Oh, it's toxic out there today. But the internet is just millions of people making individual choices.
Oh.
Every comment, every time you pause to read something, that's a vote for what kind of internet you want.
It reminds me of that line near the end. Behind every screen is a person waiting to be understood.
It's so cliche, but when you're staring at a username like Destroyer of Worlds 99, you don't really picture a guy who maybe just needs a friend.
It's the fundamental disconnect. We see the text, but we don't feel the pulse. This source argues that the maturation of the digital species, us, involves learning to feel that pulse through the glass.
Maturation of the digital species. I love that. It implies we've been in our awkward teenage phase for the last 20 years.
I think that is a very fair assessment. We've been impulsive, emotional, and obsessed with popularity. Maybe we're finally growing up. So let's bring this back to the listener, the person with the phone in their hand right now. The text actually ends with some practical advice, a call to action. And it's not delete your account.
No. The advice is, next time you scroll, pause.
Just pause.
Pause. Leave a kind comment. And the hardest one, listen before replying.
That is the hardest one, especially when someone is just wrong on the internet.
But the payoff, according to the author, is massive. They write that your small digital kindness might become someone's real connection. You don't know the ripple effect. You don't know if the person you're replying to is currently standing on a rainy subway platform, figuratively speaking, watching their oranges roll away.
And you don't know if your comment is the one that makes them say, oh, I'm not the only one.
Exactly. If we can build these little pockets of trust, the network changes. The mirror starts reflecting something different.
It really forces you to ask yourself a tough question, though. If the internet is a reflection of us, and we don't like what we see, are we blaming the glass? Or should we be changing the reflection?
That is the question of the decade. As long as we blame the glass, nothing changes. Personal responsibility is the only way to shift the culture.
Well, this has certainly been more hopeful than I expected. It's fascinating to think that by 2026, or maybe even starting tonight, this could be the norm, that we could log on to connect, not just to consume.
That is the hope, and it's entirely possible.
We want to thank you for diving deep with us today into the echo chamber. It's a provocative read, challenges a lot of our assumptions about why we feel the way we feel online.
Indeed. It's a reminder that technology is just the container. We are the content.
We are the content. I'm going to put that on a sticky note on my monitor. All right, listener, we're going to leave you with that thought. If the internet is just a reflection, what kind of face are you making at it today? Think about that the next time you open your apps.
And remember, stay curious.
Stay curious, stay kind, and we'll catch you in the next deep dive.